I guess it's just about the slip of the hand and misdirections. This is what we want to talk about today. How do we know we're being misdirected? It's not that difficult. Only we have to simply rely on our mindfulness, focus, and see where is the credibility of what we're being told or what we're being directed to. What's pulling a wool over our eyes? That's what we're going to be discussing today, because we want to see how can we tell if our mind is functioning properly or is malfunctioning. Beyond the understanding and the proofs that the scientists, psychologists, psychotherapists, researchers scientifically have proven it, that mind malfunctions, today we want to go and discuss it on layman terms. See if we can actually understand it without using the science. Why? That's the most important way to know that our mind does malfunction. And we all know that. In other words, we want to know if there is a way, a simpler way, for us to recognize if our thought is our thought or is not our thought. If thoughts are malfunctioning, misleading us, if our brain is malfunctioning and causing us to focus on something that doesn't exist, misleading us, and also diagnose our own well-being in our mind, in thoughts, in our brain. You see, simply said, we have no problem recognizing when there's something wrong with our biological portion of our entity. We have no problem realizing that there is something wrong with our biology, with our body, bodily function. It is known to us, we've been introduced to the fact that sometimes our eyes is blurred, cannot focus well, so we go and maybe rub it or wash it or rest it, or if need to, we go to a doctor and ophthalmologists and they check it out, and maybe we need glasses to see it correctly. It was double vision or was blurred or whatever it was wrong with it. Or sometimes we simply have stomach pain and we feel the pain. And sometimes there's no pain, but we realize there's something wrong with us because we want to throw up. Or if we have a problem with our intestine, we are agreeable to the fact that it can happen. And we've seen it happen. We have learned that it can happen. We get diarrhea. We go to a pharmacist or a doctor, get a pill for it, and remedy it, take care of it until it goes back to normal. There are things that we're aware that could go wrong with our biology, such as maybe you can't smell what you usually smell, and then you go and find out what's wrong with it. And it is possible, therefore, that same problems that can happen to our biology, our body, like if we get a cold or we get a flu or get a headache, or we hit our hand somewhere and hurts, or cuts and bleeds, we know that things can go wrong with our body, our physical portion of our entity as the human that we are. But there's also another portion, which is our brain, thoughts, what's created there. Can that malfunction? Well, of course. Why not? Even more so. Because these biology that we are acceptable to the fact that it can go wrong with it, can get sick or malfunctions, is all hardwired, solid. But what's in our brain is all neurons and electrical circuitries, and can obviously have a lot more possibilities to go wrong and short fuse and go haywire and malfunction on regular basis. The fact that it doesn't malfunction on regular basis, it's great, but it does malfunction in many different ways. That's why there are psychologists and psychotherapists in the world are always busy, because this brain, mental health, is a big issue in the world. And just because it hasn't happened to us yet, when it does happen, we have a hard time to believe it. Because how could it happen to me? It's never happened before. But yeah, the first time you get diarrhea, you don't panic because everybody else has said to you, yeah, it's possible, But nobody tells you that it's possible to get a brain lock or some kind of a trouble with your brain. And weird thoughts could show up. Intrusive thoughts could show up. All kinds of suggestions that is not normal for you. It's not about you, and you definitely have nothing to do with it, could show up. Suggestions of that sort. And you should be mindful of that. Be aware that that can be possible to show up things in your head that you have nothing to do with it. Like suggestions of you're a pedophile, or you want to harm someone, you want to harm, someone that you like or you love, or you want to push someone over the edge of the platform of a railroad, or all kind of things. Or if you're heterosexual, you could be having thoughts showing up in your head or images that you're gay, or you're going to be gay, or you're bi, or you're living in denial. And all these thoughts that have nothing to do with you, with your normal self, could show up. And why is it that you can't pick it up right there, that there's a malfunction? Instead, you panic, you get anxiety, you believe it, or you ponder on it, you get confused. Why? What's the credibility of the brain? Can it not malfunction? Everything else does. So this is what we want to talk about today. Beyond the proofs that we've received from all the scientists and psychologists, psychotherapists, and researchers scientifically have proven that brain malfunctions far more than one can imagine in our lives. And beyond all those scientifically proven facts that brain malfunctions, we want to today examine, can we figure it out in simpler ways in our daily lives as we go through our daily lives? Can we pick up when our brain is malfunctioning, when thoughts are intrusive and we won't get bamboozled and misled or misdirected, and be able to focus on what the facts are rather than what the illusions are constantly persisting to convince us that we are something that we are not, and make us feel all abnormal and wonder and worrying for something that doesn't even exist. For watching some of the many scientific proofs and studies that was done about how brain functions and malfunctions, you can look at the description of this video. I've put lots of links from famous researchers, psychotherapists, psychologists. They can watch their studies and at least have this reference that science has already proven this, done with it. More than any other parts of the studies on the psyche, they know about malfunction of the brain, OCD and HOCD, and intrusive thoughts and negative thoughts. But we want to now see if we can pick it up on layman terms and with simple analogies and have a little fun with it while we increase our knowledge about knowing when things go wrong with our brain and intrusive thoughts show up, and how to pick them, how to notice them, and how not to be influenced by them or bamboozled by them, and enjoy our lives as balanced and get back to how we always used to be, confident, and to be able to deal with this and of course move on with our daily lives. I've got lots of videos on this series that you can always enjoy. It's in the playlist called Intrusive, Transient, OCD, HOCD, Negative Thoughts. And there are about, 19, 20 videos and counting that it talks about all these intrusive thoughts, how to protect our thoughts, ourselves, our brain, and how to pick it up. And on that topic, we've got lots that we have discussed. So you're welcome to take a look at them and enjoy the information that is shared there. But today we just want to find out what are the easier ways that we can notice when our mind is actually gone haywire, or our brain gone haywire, and that thoughts are not us. We are not thoughts. Brain is not me. I'm not the brain. and I'm not the thoughts, and thoughts are not me. Therefore, I can be assured that I am on top of it all, I'm the boss of these, and I am the one who should be judging thoughts and not thoughts leading me. You see, we've never learned how to deal with questions that are posed to us or comments that have been uttered to us throughout our life. Remember when you were a kid and in school, bullies called you names or tried to put you down, tried to make fun of you one way or another. You never questioned what are they getting out of this, that what is their motivation. You instead wondered why they said that and start pondering on, is there any truth to it that explains me, or does that represent me? And you went on that tangent instead of questioning. The only question that is worthy and valid in such cases would be questioning the questioner. In your mind, questioning the credibility of the idiots, the bullies, the kids who were uttering that. But you didn't. We were conditioning always since childhood to take the question and think that what is being uttered has any validity instead of questioning the questioning entity. And we're doing that in the same way as an adult when people send their opinions towards us or utter something negative toward us. It affects us. Why? Because we're focusing on what it was said rather than focusing on who said it and what's the source of this nonsense and what is it that their motivation is, what's backing them, what's the credibility of the question rather than the content of the question. And the same goes with thoughts as they show up in your head, intrusive thoughts. You don't question the credibility of the questioning entity, the thought, the brain. Is it malfunctioning? Is it in good condition? Is it functioning? Or why is it presenting an image or a question when this is not of my interest? When I know that this doesn't represent me, or I have no such inclination. When a thought comes in with intrusive thoughts and intrusive images and suggests that you're a pedophile, or suggests that you want to rape someone or kill someone, or suggests that when you're heterosexual, it suggests that you're gay or you will be gay, or you're living in denial, or you're bi, or you like it if you kiss that man, or these thoughts and images show up. You don't question the credibility of the thought. Instead of thinking about, oh, it's a suggestion, it might mean something, because you've always been conditioned to think that because a thought or mind or brain is used to do math, and everybody said, oh, whoever knows math is a smart, then you think brain is a smart. And that kind of a conditioning that you've received, you think whatever brain utters or brings or represents or images or suggestions, it has credibility because you've been brainwashed to think that brain is smart because it can do math or it can figure out things. That is when you actually are using the brain and it is at your service, not when it's gone rogue and makes accusations or suggestions that is intrusive to you. So when it does make this such questions or utters such opinions or brings such images to the screen of your head, instead of wondering or trying to debate with it or prove to it anything and think about maybe it means something because it comes from my thoughts. First of all, they're not your thoughts, they're thoughts. You're not your brain. The brain is not you. You're not thoughts. Thoughts are not your thoughts. They're just thoughts. Secondly, you're supposed to question. How do you know? Who are you that you think that I will be gay, or I'm living in denial, or I will like it if I kiss another same gender? You're supposed to question the credibility of the questioner, not just focus on the question. When you go to a business meeting, they try to sell you some investment or some product. You don't take everything that they say as correct. You go and do fact check. Who's the manufacturer that builds this? What are the materials used in this product? What's the reputation of it? Where did they bring it? who's behind it, what qualities are in there, what is the label of it, what is the credibility of the manufacturing plant or standards that are being observed, or the inspections that have been done on it or not, certificates he has received or not. Oh, you check all this. If you don't, you're in trouble. Your money's gone to hell. But you don't do that when thought is trying to sell you something. The brain is trying to sell something. Why not? You're always supposed to have a protective measure in place so you won't be fooled, bamboozled, misled, just like the beginning of this video. Misdirected, and you will miss the point, and you will focus on something that doesn't exist, and you get bamboozled and go after a goose chase, and then you keep having this in your mind all day long, taking you away from your regular life, your good self, and with confidence, and the way you always had your balance and everything was clear to you. Just because a thought appears, suddenly this thought knows more than you? How could thought know more than you when it is you who teaches thought anything that it knows? Because of your action, you get an experience, and the experience brings knowledge, and knowledge is recorded in your memory, and from those memories, thought in its normal case, when it's healthy, can come up with a thought, which leads to action, experience, knowledge, and record it again. But when it goes haywire, even your healthy thoughts learns from you what you teach it, what you do in life, and it learns. It cannot learn anything without you teaching it and doing something that it can get that experience and knowledge. Let alone the thought that is gone rogue and is under OCD, or it's the intrusive thoughts that pops up out of nowhere, which science have proven that intrusive thoughts pop up out of nowhere. It has nothing to do with you. It doesn't represent you. But you don't focus on these things. You suddenly think a thought popped up, it must mean something. How could thought know things? It can only know if you teach it by selecting, separating, choosing, telling thought, no, this is not right, that is right, and conditioning it. And sometimes it goes off-road, it goes off-rail, and it's not relying on what has been told to it about you, and it just starts making things up. You're not supposed to be following the thought. Thought is supposed to be the subject of your judgment and your choosing, because the me is more important than thought. Me is the teacher of the thought, not thought is what you are. You are what teaching the thought. Therefore, if a thought, intrusive thought, pops up, has got no validity, no value, no credibility, no nothing, because it is the other way around. You judge the thought and suggest to thought what is right, what is wrong, not the thought telling you who you are. Thought has got nothing to do with you. It doesn't know anything about you. Look, if thought suggests to you to poke a needle to your hand, you will like it. If you had never done that, you have no information, and thought has gone rogue, is not operating based on what it's been balanced and logical based on the information that it has. It just creates something not out of the information that has been supplied to it in your consciousness, but out of nowhere. That's when it goes rogue, intrusive thoughts. And you believe it. So what are you going to do? You're going to put the needle in your hand and say, oh, ah. So was thought correct? No, it wasn't. It suggested something that was not to your advantage, what did not have your best interest in mind. So naturally, it is not the thought that teaches you. It is your actions that teaches thought what you like or what you do not like, and what you are and what you're not. So you having accidentally, without interference of thought, push the needle on your hand, you will learn. So how could thought know anything if you haven't done it, so it can learn from your action and the experience that action brings, and then the knowledge that that experience brings, which will be recorded in your head, in your memory. If thought knew before you, then when you wanted to stick a needle in your hand, it would tell you, don't do it. But it doesn't. The first time, the very first time that you actually did that was because you didn't know. So if thought is really know-it-all and has your best interest in mind, why didn't it tell you? Because thought doesn't know shit. Thought only knows what you tell it through your experiences, through the knowledge, through your inner true self instincts. Otherwise, thought can only wait until you do something, experience and knowledge of it would then record it, and it would be a resource for your normal healthy thought process to use it. But intrusive thoughts don't use that. Intrusive thoughts think they know. Out of where? Where from? Because we know how thought process is created. We know how thought is created. We've talked about it in video number 11. If you haven't watched it, please go watch it. It explains clearly how thoughts are created. And you can see that only intrusive thoughts that are not based on healthy thinking process come up with nonsense, because it is not based on the information that was provided to the memory, which is the reservoirs of where thought supposedly to reach in and pick up ideas that is already you have approved. But rogue thoughts and intrusive thoughts and pop-up thoughts don't follow a proper way of using that resources to calculate something, produce something, design something, accomplish something, plans for something. They just reach in, pick up whatever is out there, and they don't even know anything about it and bring it in as a suggestion. That is an intrusive thought that is based on nothing and popped up. It's not about you, it's not you, it's not representing you, and it's got nothing to do with your initiating it. And that's the kind of thought that we're talking about. So if thought is actually know it or has any accuracy when it suggests an intrusive thought to you of any kind, where does it get it? How does it know? And if it did know, why did it tell you when you first time wanted to stick a needle in your hand to tell you that, hey, no, don't do that? So it can only know through you, not you through thought. So once you focus on the logic of things, things become clear to you that thought has no business suggesting to you as if it knows better than you. It never can. Thought is part of the apparatus that is at your service, not you following thought. Thought cannot exist without you having been here in this world. And you know that thought comes second to your biology. Thought was never even in the vicinity when you were being created in your mother's womb. As we talked about it, your heart started when the sperm got into the ovum. The first spark, electrical spark, started your heart beating, creating your heart. Then after that, many other organs were created. Thought was never even near the vicinity of being created. But everything else within, 20, 22 weeks or so, your whole existence was created but thought. There still was not thought. You were in the mother's womb. Where was thoughts? So everything that was given to you, your heart, your kidney, your liver, your bones, your limbs, your eyes, your sexuality, your gender, your genitalia, all were given to you and created way before thought ever was a capability in you as a human being. And then when you were born, still there was no thought, no capability of such. So thought has never had anything to do with any part of you. Your gender, your sexuality, your genitalia, your heart, anything. It was all done way before. And so how could thought have anything to do with suggesting that you are now changing your sexuality, or your gender is changing, or it's going to be different than what it ever was and all that? How that can come about? So it is all intrusive suggestions that when thought has gone haywire, is not following your biology, is just coming up with nonsense. And you're not supposed to following it, because that is misleading only. It's supposed to follow you. So you gotta now show it behave by not paying attention to these intrusive thoughts, recognizing that they are, recognizing there's a malfunction, calling it for what it is. It's a malfunction, it's intrusive thoughts, it's OCD, it's not me. It's the brain. The brain is not me. And you judge the thoughts and recognize them for what they are, call them for what they are, and then go about your business. And this not paying attention to them, recognizing what they are, calling them for what they are, enemy, intrusive thoughts, OCD, and not my thoughts, just thoughts, and then you go about your business, they learn and you rewire your brain to come back to how it used to function healthily. And so you retrain and reteach the rogue thoughts and the malfunctioning brain to learn how it used to be and function properly. You will try to teach it again, not to be bamboozled thinking that what it suggests has any meaning or any relation to you or any representation of you. It's not of you. You're not of your thoughts, and thoughts are not you. Thoughts are not you, and you're not of thoughts. Your thoughts are different than these thoughts, and we've discussed that in video number 11, as I mentioned. So continuing on, when the thought tells me go jump off a cliff and I do it, I'll die or get seriously injured. And then thought thinks, haha, because thought is using me as guinea pig. And it knows nothing unless I do things, and then it can learn. But it represents itself, in the case of intrusive thoughts, as it knows things independently from my actions, which is stupid to believe. Thoughts, which is stupid to believe. Brain. We should always rely on the fact that we got to check the actions of the brain and thoughts that appear in our heads. And just because they appear in our head, that doesn't mean they have a credibility. If thought tells me go hit your head to the tree, and I know how it would feel because I've done it before, I'd say no. But if I don't know how it feels, if I hit my head to the tree because I've never done it, and instinct has stopped me from doing it, and my nature has somehow guided me through life by not doing it, and now it tells me go do it, you will like it, then like any other intrusive thoughts that it suggests that go do it, you'll like it, and keeps repeating that in my head, then you should ask, how do you know? Rather than thinking, well, it's my thoughts, it must know. No, it's not your thoughts. It's a thought and has nothing to do with you. And it is a thought unrelated to you. and only that is using your head as its presentation center and shows this on the screen of your head. And this doesn't mean that thought is of you or it is yours. We've talked about that. And again, go back to video number 11 and you will refresh your memory about what thought is, where it comes from, when it's healthy, let alone it's a rogue and intrusive thoughts. If someone suggests something to you to buy, something that he's selling, or whatever the suggestion is, you do not just believe it and will check it out, check the merits of it, check the, the product and that you're being presented to. You check the whole suggestion, then why would it make sense to you to be so gullible and think that thought knows anything and must be considered as any fact, when anything else in the world, when it's presented to you, you check it. You use your insight. You check it against your values and see if this thing has any credibility. But when it comes to a intrusive thought showing up, suddenly you're gullible and you consider it as any fact. You must see if it makes sense at all. It's like if someone approaches you, comes to you in the street and says, hey, let me have my way with you. So what are you going to say? You're going to say, bugger off. And you defend yourself, you protect yourself. So what's the difference between thought saying that you're not the gender that you are and puts such suggestion and brings images that is not normal to you, and it's unusual and it's not of your interest and never been, but it constantly tries to present that to you? What's the difference? Whether it's suggested by a person in the street or suggested by thought, you always rely on your values. You check it against your values. This is not meeting my values. This is not in line with my values. So you refuse it in both cases. But when it's the case of a thought, you think because it's appearing in your head, then it must have any credibility. No, where's the credibility of it? The credibility would be checked by you to be mindful and check it against your values. Does it meet my values? No, it doesn't. Therefore, it doesn't matter if someone in the street says, or thoughts pop up, intrusive thoughts pop up and suggest it. I treat it the same way. I turn around, go my way, pay no attention to it. I have understood what the suggestion was. I have understood it's not of my interest. I know it's not of me. It's a suggestion that some crazy person in the street did, or some crazy thought in my own head does. Either way, I treat it the same way. I move on with my life and ignore it until it learns that there's no entertainment here about this suggestion, and it will be rewired. The brain will be rewired by you not paying attention to these thoughts, recognizing them for what they are. They're intrusive thoughts, they're OCD, they're malfunction of the brain, and you rely on the science that has already proved it 1,000 times better than what I can say here, and then you ignore them, and then this behavior of yours rewires the brain that this is not acceptable here. Remember that. It's not meeting the values of this entity, and then eventually it gets rewired and intrusive thoughts, they will disappear because they'll be trained, they'll learn their lesson. So as the French says, dégage, il n'y a pas de pain ici. That means go away, there's no bread here. So just because a entity can talk or can communicate with us in some ways or make some facial expression or say something or project something to other people's toward other people's does not mean that that thing is correct or should be taken as if it has valuable substance or substance to consider, or if it's meaningful at all. It's just because we think anything that is communicated or has the capability of communication of one way or another, it has value. It's not true. We should always understand that what can talk can also be talking crazy. Crazy people talk, but just because they can communicate doesn't make what they say of value. We should always check that against our values. The same thing when a thought, which is capable of thinking nonsense, when it goes rogue, we should not be considering it, oh, a communication is coming through. No, it's garbled. Garbage is corrupt. Data is coming through. And we should be ready to understand that by simple checking and judging thoughts as we judge what is uttered out there. Just because it's a word, it's communication, or it's picture, that doesn't mean it has credibility or it's suitable for us. We judge what we watch, what we hear, what we participate, what we do not, based on our core values. This is why we rely on our inner values, on our wise advocate or super consciousness or the gatekeeper or our principles, whatever it is that has made us to be who we are. We should always check everything that is being projected onto us or suggested or comes to our field of vision. We focus on if it meets my values and get help and opinion from our wise advocate, from super consciousness, from our gatekeeper, from our base core values, what we have created as sacred for us to protect, which includes our way of life, our gender, our sexual preferences, our way of thinking, our approach and compassion about the society and our activities and actions, how it affects the society, and also how it could affect ourselves. So when thoughts show up or when somebody utters up, we check what is being suggested or shown against our values based on what we have decided that this is me and that's how I like to be living my life. You see, it's like a chess game, and attack and misdirection, defense, these are what goes through your head when you're playing a chess. Supposedly there's an attack coming in the chess game. So is it a real attack or is it a misdirection? Because when the person doesn't have anything else to do, just attacks. It's like when the kids bully you at school, they don't have any move. They just say something. It's like an attack, but that attack is a misdirection. It's trying to take the focus on their shortcomings and lack of value, and they're trying to hide that by attacking someone, misdirecting them from actually what they are. In chess game, when someone doesn't have a plan and gives a check, it really is trying to kind of throw off the other person because he himself doesn't have any move and is not feeling confident on his game. So it does that kind of a behavior. The same thing. But in chess, you're supposed to be actually paying attention to validity of this attack by checking out the source of attack, the background of attack, what's behind it. Is any plan in here, or is just simply somebody said something? Somebody just made a move in chess, but there's no backing, there's no credibility. If you look behind it, there's nothing protecting that. And it's just to distract you. So the same thing in life. There are lots of things comes to your life from outside or from inside the head. Thoughts, when they go rogue, when they go malfunctioning, or when parts of the brain, components of the brain are not sending the signals properly, which we've talked about in the other videos based on the scientific facts and researchers and scientists, their findings and their credible papers that they have spent years following this and learning about the malfunction of the brain and finding out what intrusive thoughts, these pop-up thoughts, really are. They have nothing to do with you. They just show up out of thin air. So you got to be wise to that. And how? By simply understanding that this is the same in thoughts. Thoughts suggesting nonsense. And if you do not check the nonsense, then you will be bamboozled, like you are bamboozled by what people utter out there about a business, an opportunity. They con you, they say nonsense, or they something about you, and you go into thoughts rather than focusing on the source, not the content, on the source, credibility of the source. Who is it this person is saying? What is his gain? What is he trying to say? What is this thought? Where does it come from? I know that that's not me. That's against my values. I know my values much more than a thought could know. Thought knows nothing of me. I'm the one who teaches everything to thought. It's supposed to follow my directions. But in fact, when they have gone rogue, they have no understanding. But you should have that knowledge that this is against my values, therefore it cannot be healthy. It cannot be correct, because you check the background of thoughts. So thought has created an illusion, and you're trying to prove and discuss the illusion rather than focusing on the source of the illusion, which is already proven by science in more ways than one, and simply shows that thoughts gone nuts. That's as simple as that. Look, let's assume there is a spoiled egg, spoiled, hard-boiled egg, and you smell it, and you say, this egg smells awful. It's spoiled. And I get the same egg, and I smell it, and I say, I smell nothing. And I say, it actually smells maybe pleasant or nothing. I don't notice anything. So then we each get half of the egg, and I convince you to eat the egg, which of course you probably have a weak mind that can be convinced not to believe your own assessment of the egg and just believe mine. And so that's another, I guess, problem, another story for another time. But so let's say I convince you and we both have the egg that you thought it smells awful, and I couldn't smell anything. So since the egg was actually spoiled, so we both get sick and throw up. In my case, when I smelled it, and since my brain has malfunctioned and did not transmit the signals, the smell, through where it's supposed to send the signal, it didn't get to where it's supposed to get, wherever part of the brain that recognizes this communication, because my brain is malfunctioned. That's why I couldn't smell it the way that it was actually smelling. The actuality of it was not apparent to me because of the malfunctioning of my signaling system. And of course, how could I know it was malfunctioning? How could a malfunctioning brain know that it's malfunctioning? It presents itself as it is not malfunctioning because it doesn't know it's malfunctioning. I'm supposed to know it, and I didn't have a way to know it because I didn't check further into it. Maybe the date of the egg and the fact that, somebody else smells it and says, oh, really, and it's not. So then maybe other many things, but when I don't follow up with the source of my assumption, then how would I know? And therefore, what happened here wasn't that the egg was okay and I just reacted to it. That's why in this story, we had the other friend also eat the egg, so we would be sure it's not my allergic or reaction or anything. The egg was spoiled. We both threw up, which means there was something wrong in my brain in recognizing and transmitting the correct information from what my nose was sniffing. It didn't. So there was something wrong in my brain, which I don't usually consider that. Whatever shows up in the brain, we believe it. Whatever thought appears, we think, it must have a meaning because it's the brain. But brain, like any other part of us, can go malfunctioning, can go sick. So we have to be mindful of that, check everything twice, and check everything against our values and know if this makes sense or not. We should always use our other senses, our logic. Does this make sense? So on that way, then we will be a little bit, more assured as what this thought is trying to represent. How would I know? By simply checking against my values. Then I would know this doesn't make sense, so therefore I should let it fall by the wayside. Doesn't matter how many times it shows up, I'm not going to be persuaded by it. I'm just going to go on and believing in my biology. So regardless of what the brain said or concluded about the egg, the biology, my stomach, knew better and did reject the egg that was deemed okay by the brain. So was the brain working correctly or not? Regardless of the fact that it was appearing in our head and insisting that the egg is okay and that you will enjoy it, it wasn't. Why? Because it has gone malfunctioning. Just like when you're a heterosexual and it is telling you that you are gay or will be or are bi or will like it if you kiss another guy. It has gone malfunctioning and your inner self knows it, and that is why you get anxious and you feel weird. We are conditioned to think brain thoughts have credibility or know things that we do not know, which is all nonsense, as brain thought only knows what we tell it and show it through our guidance and judgments. So we must be mindful of this and continue judging thoughts appearing in our heads all the time. So it did not matter the interpretation of the brain in my case, as my biology has its own intelligence and does defend what needs to be defended by rejecting the egg and hurling it up. So was the brain telling the truth? Working correctly or not? It seemed it was, no? Because we are accustomed to think what shows up in our head must mean something. But yet, my biology had its own insight and intelligence and said, I don't care what the brain did or didn't know or could or couldn't find out. I know this egg is rotten and I'm throwing it up. So you can't rely on your brain or thought as they appear that they know something I don't know. No, you know more than the brain. You're the one who actually can inform the brain, and brain can only learn and know what you tell it, show it, and guide it. But don't be bamboozled by believing what needs your teaching for it to know what it can know. And know when it goes rogue by always checking thoughts against your inner values. Brain is designed to tell the truth, and in most parts in our lives it does function as it's designed to do. But sometimes, due to whatever reason, it goes malfunction, like the rest of our existence goes and malfunctions. You know, we talked about it. Cold, flu, headache, muscle ache, lack of this, lack of that, diarrhea, stomach problem. They can malfunction. And so does the brain, and does not provide or transmit the correct signals or information due to what scientifically is proven that the signaling system has stopped working automatically and would need help to understand its job, its normal operation. This is the same if I'm not informed by the brain that the food is spoiled, smelling it, or is bitter as I cannot taste the bitterness since the brain is incapable of sending the information about the taste of the food due to its malfunction in receiving the taste buds signals, or the awful taste of the food due to its not being safe. Yet when I eat what was declared by the brain to be safe, or that I will like it as it was suggested to me, my stomach, who is not under the influence of words or quality of any information, does not follow brains or thoughts, images, or meanings of words imagined or suggested, but its own chemical reaction to substances, and follows its biological intelligence, knowing what I am allergic to or not, what I like or not. It rejects the intake and makes me throw up, or to get sick, or get a diarrhea. Obviously, my stomach is independent of the brain or the suggested thoughts, which send the false information to me to commit to the idea that I will like this food, and since the food was not safe and I sure as hell did not like it, then the action or behavior of my brain or thought is considered intrusive. Intrusive suggestions and intrusive thoughts. Now, is that not the same when we get intrusive thoughts about harming someone, or thoughts of pedophilia, or when thought keeps bringing up images, thoughts and suggestions that I'm gay, or will be gay, or I will like it if I kiss some guy that I'm talking to, or suggest that I have been living in denial, while I know my life, and I know how much I love women and intimacy with them, and that they are my natural biological programming, and my gender is what it always has been, a heterosexual, and these thoughts are just like in the case of the egg and the bitter food, are a malfunction of the brain in doing its job, and not me being in denial, but the brain is being in defiant of performing as it must. Just because we understand words and images, which the brain has the capability of communicating with us, does not mean what is being communicated is also accurate. What we understand does not mean or is not any evidence of its truthfulness or its accuracy, and just means that I can recognize the words and the images, but is the message in line with my biology or not, is the correct question. And the answer to that is already known when we take a moment and become mindful and reach out to our gatekeeper, our superconsciousness, or the wise advocate, as different researchers call it different things. Dr. Schwartz calls it wise advocate, and Dr. Philipson calls it gatekeeper, and many have their own version of explaining it to us. I call it superconsciousness. And researchers in the history about the movement of mind and how the brain works, they call it different things. But it's been discussed in many different era, and Mr. Jiddu Krishnamurti who's been the pioneering of this understanding of movement of mind and the components of our psyche, and I've discussed this with psychologists around the world and quantum physics professors numerous times in his teaching careers. We all have that inner insight and intelligence that we should rely on, rather than thoughts, which is the roots of all problems, let alone the rogue thoughts and intrusive thoughts. So we should always have a reference to the inner intelligence of the watcher of the me from inwardly available facts, and then everything will become refreshed, and the information which is no longer, while this condition that you're dealing with lasts, being accurate and no longer clear without distortion, becomes clear when we rely in our inner gatekeeper, inner values, and consult with our watcher, with our wise advocate, which are gatekeeper, with our superconsciousness and inner principles, then these informations becomes clear and bypasses the corrupt transmission bus till it is fixed. How we fix it is explained in the other videos in detail, which I hope that you will invest time and watch them. There are video series under the playlist called Intrusive, Transient, OCD, HOCD, Negative Thoughts, from video 1 to 18 and counting. And it will give you enough information for you to process and benefit from. Under each of the videos, I have the links to videos made by doctors, psychologists, psychotherapists, scientists, and researchers for you to reference with. We learn in our life that we should not rely on thought to describe us, who we are, as thought does not know my biology. My biology knows my biology. As thought is supposed to be told by my biology what my biology is through me and my fact-checking. That's how thought learns. Otherwise, on its own, it's stupid. Doesn't know anything. Definitely nothing about my biology. It was never around when I was being put together. So I know more about me than thought could ever know. When things go wrong in our brain and we get these intrusive thoughts, transient thoughts, negative thoughts, OCD, HOCD thoughts, we somehow seems not to remember anything about who we are and how our past was and our lifestyle was, because these are intrusive thoughts. The malfunctioning, the brain is malfunctioning. It cannot reach down where it always reached for evidence and assurance and a reference of the inner values and how our life has been. You know, you can inwardly, when your mind is healthy, think about it. You can reach into your childhood and see how you were naturally behaving and perfectly as how you always been. You're heterosexual and you can see the evidence of your life. But when your mind is malfunctioning, you seem not to reference it at all, which is where you should go and reference to refresh the correct information rather than the malfunctioning brains and thoughts, suggestions and what it alludes to and you know tries to bamboozle you with it. For example, you look deep, you know, if a child looks deep and sees and remembers running around, loving the companionship and kind of flirting at that little age of his with girls of 16 years old, 20 years old, 30 years old, just being interested in women, then it refreshes his memory about his heterosexual life. But when the mind, the brain malfunctions and intrusive thoughts appear, it looks like it can't even refer its inner self and to focus on its true self through mindfulness, which is very important for all of us to do all through our lives, to rely on the true self of ours inwardly by being mindful of it. When we're going through these sort of challenges, the intrusive thoughts attacking and transient thoughts and so on and so forth, we seem to not able to access the true inner self, our history, how we lived, how we always liked the way things were and how we always functions the way we did, what we love, what our sexual interest and history is. None of that seems to come to rescue because we don't focus on it, we don't access it, and we don't become mindful on what we're all about. For example, In such cases, one would not remember and running around in events or sporting events and as a kid, but always hanging around a 16-year-old girl, a beautiful girl and call almost any pretty girls that he was spending time with and hanging around with all the time, among all people there, always hanging around with these girls, and then girls at his own age, 4 years old, 5 years old. These were just natural way of his being, had nothing to do with thoughts. Where was thoughts in this? There is no thoughts at that age. It's just functioning and reacting to his own instinct, how his gender and programming and sexual interest and inclinations are, as it was programmed in him, as he was put together. Naturally, his animal instinct was leading his life without anybody having any influence on him. His choice, his feelings, his natural reaction to the female. And that's how he is. But when such intrusive thoughts appear, one at any age, 20, 30, 40, 50, when such intrusive thoughts attack, one doesn't access what his origin and natural state of being without interference of thought has always been, which is what we should really focus on, because that's the truth of ourselves. Not thought, not suggestions, not thought that is not our thought, is just a thought pops up, intrusive, coming out of nowhere, suddenly could have a say in what we are, versus the truth of us when we become mindful and access what we've always been since childhood, before we develop into anything that a thought could actually have any role in it. That's the natural way of our being. And that's what we should be focusing on. That's why mindfulness is so important for us, to readjust ourselves to our true self. That's why the wise advocate or gatekeeper, or phrases like superconsciousness or the watcher, are all important to remind us who we are, what we are, how we've been put together before thought ever was developed in a way that could have any saying or being intrusive or anything, and it was functioning normally and perfectly. Thought then had no role in it at all in anything about our biology. Our inner animal, through instinct, had all what it had to do with it. So thought is never necessary when it comes to our biology. All the misleading and misfiring started when thinking ability was developed in the human being. Before the thought showed up, living as an animal thousands of years before thinking ability became part of our presentation abilities or communication and learning and so on. Our wisdom and awareness is through our biology, whatever is concerned with the function and participation of our biology, which specifically includes our sexuality, gender, and sexual inclination. Thinking is a tool to service the me who was there way before thought became a tool or a capability of ours, human being. Thinking is a tool to service the me and nothing else. Like my eyes are here to serve me to know where I'm going, but not what I am and what my gender is by seeing images that is out there as I go about my daily life and see all these writings and pictures and other same genders here and there. It's a tool for me to see, to use it to negotiate my way through my daily life. It's not supposed to be telling me who I am. Thought is the same. Thought is a tool for me to calculate, figure out things, design things, plan for things and accomplish things. That's when I'm having my brain healthy and functioning within the normal parameters. However, when it goes rogue, it's intrusive thoughts, transient thoughts. I'm not supposed to pay any attention to them. And I should know the difference by judging and always be mindful about how is the state of my brain and why is it behaving abnormally or suggesting things that are not normal to me. And then I become mindful and then quickly judge that this is an intrusive thought. Just like when intrusive thoughts appear in the heads or thoughts in people with no OCD or HOCD, I would also simply let them be and move on with my life, rather than debating with it and spending time with it, engaging energy, and then making it to become something that I become good at thinking about it. Because whatever you keep doing, you're actually creating an ability to become good at it. So if it's a wrong thing that you're spending your time and focus on, you become really good at that. Simple. It's conditioning. And now we're trying to rewire and recondition our brain to function properly. Now that we realize it's talking nonsense and it's suggesting things that is not normal to us. And therefore, we got to recognize that and try to help it by the way we treat it and our behavior. We try to teach it that this is not right for us, and you rewire yourself. And we'll exchange time with you and energy with you when you become healthy again. That's the important step. Let me give you another example of how we can tell if the mind is not functioning properly as it should, like the egg example. If you have a chicken sandwich and can your mind tell you if it is good or expired and that it will make you sick or not? Well, of course not. It cannot until you eat it, and then your biology reacts to it, and then the brain thought learns that it was not good. So anything that thought knows, it learns it from the biology. There is a me first, and then thought learns from the me's experiences. So when it comes on its own and says nonsense, then the me should say, I override you by being mindful and referring to my inner true self, and I recognize what you are, intrusive thoughts, and not having anything to do with me. Your thoughts, your OCD, your HOCD, you're not me. It's the brain. I'm not the brain. You call it for what it is, and you move on. In fact, a thought brain is most stupid and does not know anything unless you teach it, and can only become smart as long as it has not become sick and is not malfunctioning, like how it happens with our intestines, which we could get sick, or our lungs due to cold or some virus. Brain can also go through its malfunctioning and sickness and so on. So as long as it is healthy, then it can learn from what we teach it, and that's the only time that it can become smart, while it's healthy. And if we guide it through our guidance by selecting, choosing, and judging the thought and choices of the brain, you will be training the brain thought to become aware of what and how things are, and how to distinguish things, and how to be. And in the case of your sexuality, the thought is as oblivious as what would the name of your sons or daughters, children's son or daughter's name would be in 200 years from now. That's the level of knowledge of a brain. Zero. It can suggest to you about your sexuality as much as it can tell you what's the name of your 200 years from now son or daughter's children would be. But because we have a negative mind and doubtful mind, and everything for the negative mind and negative to you in your brain has an open road. It's much easier to be negative and believe in the negative because there's no risk to it. If you believe in a negative, let's say if you believe that your loved one is going to be killed tonight, it's easier to let that be than thinking, no, everything's going to be okay. Even though you want everything to be okay and you wish for everything to be okay, but when you think about something positive, you're always afraid that it won't be as you wish it to be. But when you think about something negative, it's always easy to run with it and let worst negative things come to mind, because that's how negative mind works. It conjures up nonsense, and we are all living conditioned and based on fear, and fear takes over the thought and intrusive thoughts, and it runs with it, and all kinds of negative things appears into our mind which has nothing to do with us and no actuality or factuality to them, but it is how the negative mind operates, and all these thoughts are created and create anxiety and fear, and none of them are true. None of them are factual. But that's how we are wired. Negative thoughts always have an open road, highway, to run as fast as they want and create whatever the nonsense it is that they create. But when it comes to positive thinking, it's always like a rocky road. You gotta make it stick. You gotta focus on it. Just that's the way that the brain functions. Unfortunately, it's all based on thousands of years of fear and anxiety and problems due to malfunction of the brain, due to the societies we lived in, due to dangers that we faced from thousands of years ago, and it has been transferred through genes to us this way. So unfortunately, the doubtful mind has been trained all our lives to get hardwired and to submit to, because it would act as random, and we have become superstitious and accustomed to and think by accepting the negative, we're protecting the positive. And that has become our habit, to the point that when a negative mind, as stupid as it is, suggests somewhat into our brain, we actually think it means something and ponder on it instead of kicking it out of our heads and not pay attention to. Ridiculous. So because this negative mind has always had it easy because of all the conditionings we've received from thousands of years ago, we have hardwired this negative nature of the brain, and it's easy for us to accept the negative out of fear that I have to accept the negative in order to protect the positive. It just has become part of our conditioning. And because, these intrusive thoughts and malfunctioning brain acts random out of nowhere, and it's been doing that through the history, and has turned us into resort to superstition and feel weak and always praying and hoping as if we are not in control, and that we have to be praying in order to combat what negative abnormal suggestions thought brings about. We have become superstitious and accustomed to think that by accepting the negative, we're protecting the positive. And that has become our habit, to the point that when a negative mind, as stupid as it is, suggests something into our brain, we actually think it means something. And we ponder on it, and instead of kicking it out of our head and not paying attention to it and ridicule it and go on with how we have always lived and focused on our ways, we start shivering and thinking, oh, maybe it is something that knows that I don't know. That's the same thought. There's as stupid as you know that can only learn per your guidance. And suddenly we're conditioned to be afraid of the thought that appears in our own head and believe these thoughts rather than judging them and putting them in their place when they have gone rogue. And know that they have gone rogue by relying on our mindfulness and reaching out and checking the facts based on our true self, as it's always been. So when it says or suggests something out of its own freaking self, then it is illogical, and surely it is not having your best interest in. And it has gone rogue and is malfunctioning. As a system, it is to perform per its experience and programming, but when the mind goes corrupt and malfunctions, then it makes up things, as it is no longer following its master program and has gone off the rail, which is why we should not believe our mind when we see what it says is opposite of our inner value based on the consultation we do with our wise advocate, superconsciousness, and the gatekeeper, which are all different names for our mindfulness about what our values and lifestyle and truth of us is. We must always check what thought projects against these sacred values to make sure our brain has not gone crazy and is healthy and functioning properly. So our gatekeeper, the wise advocate, or the superconsciousness, or the watcher, holds our inner self and true self, which is the protector of who we are against all enemies, foreign or domestic, which means what people may utter negatively about us, or what thought suggests or repeats in our brain millions of times in order to derail us and bamboozle us. And that is how we avoid believing the nonsense come out of thought and know it is intrusive and not of us. Hence, we ignore and do not get confused or need to pay any attention to such intrusions, and we will protect our sanity by not engaging in any lengthy debate, and we rewire our brain to start performing and functioning normal again. And we always keep checking what the brain or thought pops up to our heads by checking with the true self we know of us. We have a responsibility to know and check and judge thoughts that appear in our heads. And everything in us must behave, and if not, we ought to know and correct it. It's not like we should think, oh, nothing ever goes wrong with our brain. Yeah, everything else we know can go wrong with our body. You know, my toe could hurt if I hit it somewhere. I could have a headache, or my muscle could ache, or I could have a diarrhea, or kidney, or liver problems. These are all accepted. But when it comes to our mind, we automatically believe anything that pops up in this box. Why? We also have to have a way to check it. Check it against who we've always been, to become mindful and check with the wise advocate, the inner us, superconsciousness, the inner values, and see if it's measuring up, if it's functioning normal or not. We got to check everything. Just as we check our body, we got to check our brain, have a way to check our brain, its function, and then see if it's operating 100% or it's not balanced. And then take actions to fix it, like we take care of our bodies when it goes something wrong with it. Thought is supposed to serve you and not itself. When it goes malfunction, then it does not follow your instructions and comes up with all kinds of stuff that has nothing to do with you and has just gone haywire, just like the Skynet. You know, in the movie with, everybody knows about, what was the movie's series? Arnold Schwarzenegger. The Skynet that takes over. It's just like Skynet, which is no longer operates with the interests of the master, and it has gone off the rail. And if you see this, then you're safe. Otherwise, you will become the servant of your servant, which would make thoughts your master rather than your tool and subordinate, and you the master, as it is meant to be. It is always the brain, thought, that gives you the wrong message. Have you ever made a mistake when thought had nothing to do with it? Never. It has always been the thought that led you to disaster and mistakes and errors, because you thought they are correct, because it was through thoughts. Thoughts are the source of the problems, and all what goes wrong in our lives is because of thoughts. Think about it. There's never been a mistake that thought was not involved. There has never been an exam that you failed because your thought that answer is right and you chose that. It is always thought that causes disaster. So it can cause success and it can cause failure. It can be right and it can be wrong. So you are above thoughts. You are supposed to be the judge to check its decisions or its suggestions, especially when it's healthy, let alone when it's malfunctioning and it's not healthy, you must always be aware, be on the lookout if thoughts are functioning properly or not. If it's anything against your biology, anything against the way you've always been and love to be, that's your clue. Then go deeper and use your wise advocate, your super consciousness, your watcher, your gatekeeper, and ask for their guidance in order to discredit and disassociate yourself with the intrusive thoughts and the transient thoughts and the OCD and HOCD thoughts, and regain your balance and your mastery and to become on top of it all again. So it is our responsibility to protect ourselves by being mindful and protect our values and principles, and they are your priority to protect, which means protecting your survival and sanity. Always refuse the egg that smells and be mindful, so regardless of how many times a thought doesn't do its job and fools you to eat the egg, and then your biology has to deal with it, you refuse the egg when it smells, so your biology will be helped and not have to suffer and go through all kinds of anxieties until you figure this out and then get your balance back. So by not paying attention to when you smell the egg, when you see intrusive thoughts are appearing, then you help yourself to regain your sanity, your balance, and steady as she goes, continue your life as confident as you always have been, or you should be. We must protect ourselves from things, especially from thoughts. And by now, you know how. If you don't, please watch all the videos from number 1 to number 18 and counting. I hope this was a guide to your healthy journey through your life, and healthy mind and healthy body, to have that balance that you deserve and the confidence that we all need and deserve, the confidence that we've all built or trying to build. It all starts from healthy mind, and healthy mind starts with trusting your biology, trusting your sanity, trusting your watcher, trusting your wise advocate, your super consciousness, your gatekeeper, and living your life based on your values and nothing else, especially the rogue thoughts. Happy journey, my friends.